welcome back to another episode of Come Over for Dinner. I'm so excited you're joining me today. Today I have a very special guest. Her name is Janna Shaw. She has 5 grown children and going on 18 grandchildren. She just told me that 15 of those are boys and there are only 3 girls. So she is a busy lady. There's a lot of energy in that family when you have the whole crowd over for dinner. So welcome, Janna.
Thank you for having me.
I'm going to tell you a little bit more about Janna, and she'll share some things as well. But Janna, in her past, has been a nurse as well as a teacher. She did teach at Logos School for 10 years, where I currently teach. She taught 4th grade, 7th grade, a 7th grade class, and 9th grade class. A post from Logos regarding a production that she was a part of for the drama department states that she fondly remembers preparing for the 4th grade plays. She has been the producer for the last 2 drama productions for Logos High School, Beauty and the Beast, as well as The Sound of Music, and they have been fabulous. As for her hospitality, a friend shared with me that Janna has been her partner in hosting many ladies' lunches, and Janna and her husband jump in and host larger events as well at their home. They've hosted a giant 4th of July dinner and fireworks, weddings, and receptions. Her friend Brenda continues to tell me, in my book, Janna is a godly servant and very willing to put her own interests aside to help others. So as a nurse, you did go overseas for a while. Tell me a little bit about that.
I worked for 10 months for an organization called Food for the Hungry as a ship's nurse. And I was newly graduated. And when in my interview, I said, so what? I won't have to deliver a baby or anything like that. And the interviewer said, oh, no, dealing with sunburn and dehydration and stuff like that. Well, the very first trip, there was a 16-year, I was on a ship picking up Vietnamese refugees out of the South China Sea right after the Vietnam War ended, which was 1979. So this was 1980. And the 16-year-old girl, I delivered this 3-pound baby. Of course, I didn't know really what I was doing. She did all the work, but anyway,
Wow.
that was my introduction to being a ship's nurse, and nobody spoke English except myself. So it was pretty tough. But I had this big idea one time, I'm going to show all these refugees on this ship how to make popcorn, American popcorn. Well, first of all, it came in a tiny little can in the store, and I had to search high and low and ask about corn, dried corn, and finally found popcorn. So I make this popcorn in this old galley in this ship with this cook, and I put butter and salt on it, and everybody's spitting it out and spitting it out. And then the ship's cook grabs it and goes in there and puts tons of sugar on it, because sugar, is kind of a sign of wealth, and everybody loves sugar. It was like early kettle corn, so to speak.
Maybe you
but it was so
invented
funny.
it.
I'm like, what? They don't like this? But he knew exactly what to do, and he went and then we had kettle corn for.
And they loved that. They would eat that.
They loved it.
It is so interesting. I mean, I can understand liking the sweet corn, but to spit out buttery, salty popcorn.
I know. I'm like, I totally
love buttery, salty
me too,
popcorn.
And I'm not a fan of kettle corn, but it was
no, I don't prefer the sugar.
And then I did a quarter of nursing school in Costa Rica, and it was the same kind of thing where their milk, they would flavor it. It would be like strawberry milk or caramel milk. And in the bottom of your glass would be like an inch of this raw sugar. It was totally disgusting. But it was a sign of wealth if you could give your children sugar.
Oh.
So they had all this sugar, and there were billboards of dental, like taking care of dental cavities because people
they just had too much of it.
But every time the mom would turn around, I'd pour my milk back in the pitcher because I couldn't stand it. And she, Janna, and she'd pour me more. Like,
cup.
You loved it. So let me pour you more.
That's pretty great. That reminds me of a story I'm reading in 2nd grade. Well, it's about to come up. I've read it a couple of times in the past couple of years. Have you ever read By the Great Horn Spoon?
Yes.
It's hilarious. When I first started teaching 2nd grade and saw that book on the guide, the lesson plans. I thought, well, it's a historical account of the gold rush, and it's a boy and a man that go to the gold rush, the California gold rush. Anyway, so I thought, well, it's going to be a story, interesting, but anyway, there's a funny scene in there. It's not. It's hilarious. It is a historical. Well, it's fiction, but it's an account of what it might have been like. But it's a very, very funny adventure. And one of the stories in there that really cracks me up is about coffee, where he is given this campfire coffee. The boy, he's like 12 or something like that. He's given this campfire coffee from an old miner, and it is disgusting, just this thick sludge. And when the old miner isn't looking, he kind of tosses it out or somehow gets rid of it. And when he notices his empty cup, he fills it right back up.
And you're like, oh, bummer.
Oh, he had to drink it because they really wanted the favor of this miner, so he could stay on the claim, or he would help him or whatever. Anyway, so then he earned the nickname Jamocha Jack because he pulled that. He got that coffee down.
I have a reverse
the sludge down.
I have a reverse hospitality story when I was in Thailand, which was tied to the Singapore trip. I was visiting other college students that were doing short-term missions and stuff. But this Thai family, very, very poor Thai family, wanted to have all of us relief workers over there. There were like 6 of us. And so we go to their house, and they have no money, and they have put on this feast for us. And we're sitting out in like a little covered area, just the shack, and there's a naked bulb hanging down over the table, to which all the bugs in the country of Thailand are attracted to, right?
Right above your food.
We're having this food. A lot of it was very weird, like weird critters and insects in it and stuff like that. And you'd bring your spoon up to your mouth, and plop, a fly or something would fall into it. And we're just eating because you wanted to be good guests, and they have poured everything into it. And a lot of it was very good. It was just very different. But I remember just fighting the giggles because here's all these bugs falling into our food.
Added protein.
And I'm sure it was like.
But when they're putting that much into it, they're watching your every move and bite. They're making sure that you really are eating a lot and enjoying it, and you really don't want to offend.
I mean, I sort of wish I could go back now at my age and redo that to be more respectful and more, just I was young.
Well, I'm sure you were still a very good guest. The giggles is better than crying.
Right.
Or spitting it out or, something along those lines.
Yeah.
So, wow. That's very interesting. Yes. So when you signed up with this company, was it called Feeding the Hungry?
Food for the Hungry.
Food for the Hungry. You probably had a bit of a different image than delivering a baby on a ship.
Right.
It kind of sounds like what you've prepared yourself, or a preparation for what you're doing now.
Yeah.
Feeding the hungry, feeding people.
Yeah.
But as a nurse, I guess your day-to-day job was
taking
people.
care of people. Yeah. Yeah.
And then food was done by other people. But of course, you got in there and showed them some American popcorn.
Food, the food was, the whole crew was Indonesian. And the food was extremely rustic and plain, a lot of things on rice, like a lot of things, weird things on rice. So.
Did you pick up any recipes or types of cooking from there? No, you just were focused on the nursing part and getting through the day.
Right. So.
Oh, wow. Those are fun stories. One of her daughter-in-laws, I teach her son in my 2nd grade class, so I texted her and asked her to tell me a little bit more about Janna.
That's funny.
So Paige told me, when I first got introduced to the Shaw family, that was one of the first things I noticed about Janna. She was always inviting people over for lunch on Sundays or Saturday dinner. She is the one I aim to be like because she is so hospitable and so laid back too. She wants you to feel comfortable and at ease, and people always do. She doesn't worry about messes and lets her grandkids make them. Her house is lovely, but you never feel like you're messing things up there. She really is the best. She always has appetizers or little snacks and a glass of wine for people to munch on and sip while the food is getting ready. We can invite people last minute, and she's always game. She wants people to feel loved and wanted at her table, and this extends to guests and grandkids alike. And then she says, "Is that too much? Can you tell I love her lots?"
That is very, very sweet.
After reading that, can I say that I want to grow up to be like you? Those are big shoes to fill. So you, from your perspective, tell me a little bit about all that you do. You obviously do this with just a humble attitude. I don't think you would have told me any of this yourself.
Probably not.
But you work very hard to serve your family and make it fun. So tell me a little bit more about that.
Well, I love having people over. And right now, just with our immediate family, it's a big crowd.
Mm-hmm.
But we usually tell one of our daughters or daughters-in-law, pick a family to bring over so that it's not just us.
Mm-hmm.
And for Thanksgiving, we're trying to find a family with older kids so that our older grandkids have more people to play with or to spend time with, because we have lots of littles. So it's pretty noisy in our house.
And so whoever comes has to be ready.
Our house is not large at all. So it's pretty cramped, but we just cram people in. I'm like, oh, we can fit 22 people around the table. And my husband is going, no, we can fit 16, because he wants everybody to have room. And I'm like, oh, people don't care about snuggling in, right?
Elbow to elbow. So everybody tuck your elbows in.
Yeah, we do have kid table, but it's in kind of the same room. And I have 3 little folding tables that we can fit like 15 kids at, which, elevates the noise level as well.
Mm-hmm.
But we just go with it. And we do bigger crowds in the summer because we have, the outdoors that we can eat out, plus they can play outside too. So it's harder in the winter, but we still do pretty big, 30 to 40 people at a pop.
That's so much fun.
It's a lot of fun. And I have lots of help. Like my 3 granddaughters are 9, 10, and 14. And a lot of times they'll come over early and help me by setting the table. And the 9 and 10-year-old are super good at making like a charcuterie board and cutting up veggies with ranch dressing. They do a lot. And I can just say, do this and do this, and I leave it, and they do it. So they're getting trained, and their moms train them well too. So
they're your prep crew.
Mm-hmm. And then the last few Thanksgivings, my daughter-in-law, Jasmine, has come over the day before and helped kind of set the table, like make it more fancy. She's very good at centerpieces and all that kind of stuff. So she comes over and helps me too. So that's really fun.
Mm-hmm.
We sip on a glass of wine and chat while we do it. And so that's really good.
Makes it much more fun. What a blessing to have all that talent too, to come to and help you with your events.
We've never lived in a fancy house, and people don't care.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, most people don't care that it's not like perfect, or, they just don't care. They like the fellowship and they like being involved. And I always want everything to be ready. Okay, everything is ready for when the company comes. And my husband told me a while ago, you need to have some things that people can do when they come in. So some wife, maybe it's somebody that you don't really know, but she would like to sit there and cut up something and chat. And when people are doing things with their hands, they're more comfortable and they open up more.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want it coming into a perfect setting. Doesn't necessarily let them relax. Not that you should not be at all ready.
Right. No, but that's a good tip.
But some things can be left for people to do, or cut this bread and put it in the basket. And it gives them a sense of being part of it. Also, if some guests are late, we don't say, okay, they're here, let's sit down and start. we give them a chance to have a glass of wine or an hors d'oeuvre or something to ease
where
into
they
it.
don't feel like they're just rushing in and being rushed to the table.
You guys were late, and we started without you. We never do that.
No.
And doing more with having some of the boys clear things, clear, rinse, and stack. And our kitchen is very visible and almost on top of our dining room. And so we don't generally do the dishes, but getting it cleared out and making room for dessert, is the boys can learn to do that.
Well, with 15 of them, not that they're all big enough to do that, but
I mean, some of them, of course, you don't
would
want
take
them
an
doing
instant.
that yet.
Sure. Yeah. Some of them are a little too small, but the ones, I bet you have a full serving crew.
Yeah.
15 boys there. It won't be too many years before you blink and that table's completely empty.
Oh, for sure. For sure. Which, that brings me to seasons of life, because when our kids were in high school, all the boys would do the dishes. Now we're empty nesters. And so I don't do as much pre-prep for things as I used to because I have a lot of time to do it. And I do love dinking around in my kitchen and getting ready for something. There's seasons of my life where I did a lot of pre-prep when my kids were little and a lot of doubling recipes and quadrupling recipes and, that kind of thing, throwing this duplicate into the freezer for another time or for a gift for somebody.
That makes sense. And that's a very good point that you kind of have to work within the season that you're in. And sometimes that's not necessary.
Right.
If you're home all day and you have time to do it, then it's not necessary to always be completely ahead of the game like you would be if you were teaching full time at a school, or working as a nurse.
Yeah. There were years when my kids were little where I was full-time teaching and we lived in Seattle. I drove 45 minutes to school each way. So I did different things on Saturdays that got me ready for the week, which I see the gals with lots of kids right now running to and fro. And I kind of misremember that I did that too. I think, wow, how do they do that? But it's a season.
Sure. And we probably relied on our crock pots more in that season.
For sure. Or everybody has Instapots now. I don't have an Instapot, I don't need it in the same way that they do, but that's such a great thing,
Great tool. It's pretty wonderful to be thought ahead to be able to walk in and there's dinner just all hot and simmering in your Instapot or slow cooker.
Yeah, yeah.
So you do host family dinners every Sunday afternoon, or is
every
it Saturday
Sunday
night?
Afternoon, although we've been switching more to Saturday nights because everybody, there's so many kids that need to nap and that kind of thing, but we started off Sundays because some of our married kids had family that did Saturdays, so we did Sundays. But we're kind of switching. We're not legalistic about it. Sometimes it's like everybody wants to do Sunday, like on a sunny summer day when they can play outside and, But we do pretty much meet once a week over a meal, and that's 20-something to 30 people. So I'm used to doing big amounts. In fact, when Marty and I are the only ones home, I have a hard time, bringing it down to a scale.
I can relate.
So fortunately, he's a great leftovers person.
Yes. Yes, the same at our house. We're trying to master the small amounts. We're not used to it either. Or we're getting more and more used to it.
Right.
But it's hard to cook for a tiny crowd. So tell me a little bit about when you do cook. What would one of your favorite menus be that you would serve at a Sunday dinner?
Oh, I have a great one for that. And we call it Snow on the Mountain. Probably everybody has a version of this recipe. It's basically chicken and a sauce like over rice, right? And the thing that I love about it is, for one thing, our family and Marty's family, we both grew up with this recipe. The snow on top of the mountain of food is shredded coconut, right? So the nice thing about this recipe is you can do it for a huge crowd or just your family. You can make it fancy or not fancy. So it's the idea of the chicken and gravy over rice, and then toppings like green onions and nuts, mandarin oranges, pineapple, chow mein noodles, anything you can think of. I'm trying to think: pineapple chunks, green onions, chopped up peppers, colorful peppers and stuff. So you can make it as voluminous or just chicken over rice.
And you set those things out in bowls for people to kind of build their own?
They can build their own. So sometimes, a funny story is, one time one of my grandsons went through and all he had was mandarin oranges. I mean, no rice, no chicken, no nothing. But the idea is that, people can make it be what they like. They can choose their things to put on it. And it's inexpensive because rice is such a good meal stretcher, and most kids love rice,
And chicken's not. Usually you can find chicken for a reasonable price.
And it's shredded or chopped up in there, and everybody loves it. I have a niece that was her wedding what do you call it?
Like her main dish for her reception. Okay.
Yeah. So
that has to be an incredible recipe.
It's also really good because guests have many things they can bring. Like if somebody only wants to bring cans of mandarin oranges, they can. So they can choose 3 bunches of green onions to bring, or sometimes I don't have the guests bring anything, depending on who I'm having. And I don't like to assign, because if somebody hates green onions, they don't want to bring it, right? So sometimes I'll send a list and say, oh, pick something or something else to put on top of chicken and rice. So it's super easy. Oh, olives, tomatoes, celery, carrots, lots of things, anything you can imagine. And people can bring their favorite thing. So,
what does the sauce taste like? Is it fairly neutral to go with?
It's fairly neutral. Neutral. I brought the recipe, but
okay. Well, I'll definitely post it.
I put curry in it. You can put as little or much, in it. This recipe will serve part of my family, but I usually quadruple it because it's a great leftover thing, and you can make it ahead.
Is it something you can freeze? The rice,
Yes.
I know you probably wouldn't do the chicken and sauce part.
You can actually freeze rice, but I don't.
Okay.
But the chicken and sauce, you can totally freeze.
When you freeze rice, just as a side note, I put rice recently, leftover rice in the refrigerator, and I tried it today, and it is so dried out, it's almost inedible. So how do you
I wouldn't do it unless I was
freezer?
doing a sauce over it.
Okay, so you would put the rice in sauce before freezing it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would freeze
that makes
like
more
that.
sense.
Sometimes for Marty and I'll freeze recipes in single serving or double serving things, and we can zap it in the microwave,
Just have an instant meal, but it's homemade. That's a great idea.
Yeah. So I think this is a great recipe. I mean, I've also done lasagnas, and we love Mexican food. So I often do fajitas, tacos, and, that's easy for the kids too. They can have just a cheese quesadilla, or they can have more on it, So that's one of the ones that I've been doing for years and years and years.
Well, I love that. And it sounds really like a one dish meal, but do you add anything to it? Since there's the chicken, there's the rice, there's all the toppings. Are you
There's
done?
all the salady stuff. I do usually do like a Caesar salad with it, just because
you add a little
sort
bit
of
more
feel
of
like
a
you
salad.
want to have something else, And then speaking of daughters-in-law, Paige loves to make desserts. And I don't really like to make desserts because we don't eat them that much anymore. So she usually will chime in with a dessert, and that's great too. And she's making something she loves to do, right?
So if you were going to make a dessert, do you have one from the past that you have made and love?
Yes, I have 2 now that I'm thinking about it. Besides just ice cream, which our family loves, I have a flourless cake recipe that I've made forever, and you can serve it plain. It's very rich, so it's a small sliver. So one springform pan can serve, 20 people. And then I also have recently made panna cotta, which I love. That's like a light dairy dessert that you make.
That would be good after a heavy meal.
After a heavy meal, it's very good. And I got that one off of natasha'skitchen.com.
Okay. And both of those, can you top both of those with berries if you wanted to, or whipped cream? I mean, you might do whipped cream on the chocolate dessert.
Yeah, but the panna cotta is creamy, so like raspberries and blueberries, and it's really pretty too. And you can serve it in, cute cups or goblets or something. So those are the 2 that I make besides basic cookies,
Those are great ideas.
Yeah. So I think just really making people feel welcome and not stressed about things. And we've had everything. We've had things where kids have broken things, or one time with this family we had over, the little girl ended up on the dining room table running around. And, you just have to, like, I swoop her off. I go, oh, we don't do that here, and it's no big deal. It doesn't, people are learning how to be.
You're not getting flustered by it. You're just ready to, swoop her off when needed.
Right. And I do have a friend when we lived in Seattle that almost every time that she would come over, she would break a wine glass. And I just would say, okay, now you all can relax because something's been broken, It's like, who cares,
Right. You just make her at ease versus worrying about a glass.
Yeah. Or worrying about the Mets, just put a towel on it and deal with it later, kind of thing.
Those are good tips. If you prepare yourself ahead of time, then you make it about your guests versus yourself being inconvenienced or put out or whatever it is,
And getting yourself into the mindset that it is about your guests. It's not about you. It's not about having your house be perfect. And we lived in a house in Seattle that I'm sure that the linoleum that was peeling up in the kitchen probably had asbestos in it.
Oh, no.
I mean, I'm not positive, but I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, the house was such a fixer-upper, but people would come in and sit around in this kitchen. It was kind of closed off. Sometimes some people would even sit on the floor and just chat while we're prepping stuff, and I'm thinking, they don't care.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're just happy to be there,
fellowship.
Having a conversation and enjoying your company.
Yeah.
Let's take a quick break. Are you searching for hands-on activities to help your kids explore the practical side of science? Look no further than your kitchen. Inquisicook blends food science and culinary arts into an engaging program that puts delicious food on the family table. Let Inquisicook do the teaching with lesson videos, reliable recipes, and assessment tools that put students on track for success. Their online platform is easy to navigate and optimized for mobile, so the learning experience can move from the classroom to the kitchen without a hitch. Inquisicook turns curious students into intuitive cooks, not just recipe followers. Say goodbye to the tyranny of the ingredients list and say hello to utilizing what's in season, what's on sale, or what's in the fridge. Visit Inquisicook.com to view sample lessons, then check out the recipe gallery to see just how crave-worthy science can be. So with this particular meal, sometimes we talk about shortcuts or time savers. Do you have anything in particular besides, maybe you could chop it, get the toppings ready ahead of time or something like that? Is there anything else you might do?
You can make the chicken portion the day before easily or a couple days before easily. But as far as, one season of my life when my kids were little, Marty was in the Navy, I did this thing for a year where I said, this is my chop and drop day. And I would have whatever menu, and I would go to the grocery store, come home, and then I'd chop everything according to what it was going to be in. Like if it was sliced onions, I'd slice that amount, put it in a baggie in the fridge, or diced onions, or just cut everything up. And the idea was it was such a time saver because you're cleaning your knife once, right? You're getting your cutting board out once. You're doing all this stuff once. And I called it drop because you're exhausted at the end of it kind of thing.
Right.
But it was a huge time saver because then at 5 o'clock, I can go, oh, there's my diced onions. There's my sliced carrots, and, boom, boom, boom. You're not doing all that work.
Oh, that's a great
And
tip.
it was really fun to do when we were in California on a military base, and we just kind of did some fun things for efficiency, because I love efficiency. That was kind of fun to do that. I don't do that anymore because I don't need to. What other time savers? I used to, if I made a lasagna, to make 2, and I'd put one in the freezer, or I'd double or quadruple or whatever a recipe. Like with soups, I do that all the time because I can put, several meals in the freezer, or I can take a meal to somebody that, I hardly ever make just a single recipe. Even now, I hardly ever make just a single recipe.
Well, that keeps you very prepared for last-minute hospitality. If someone is in need of a meal, or if, you can't cook for that night, you have dinner for yourself, or if someone pops up and wants to come over for dinner, or you want to invite them at the last minute, you have something.
Yes,
so those are great tips. And how fun I like your, what was it? Shop, chop, and drop.
Yes.
You thank yourself later, every day following that day, even though it's hard that day, every single day afterwards, you're so appreciative of all the work you've already done.
Yeah. And I was talking to my daughter earlier today about, she doesn't like to plan 6 meals for the week because sometimes you have something planned and you think, I don't feel like that tonight. So she plans 3. And then one or 2 nights are leftovers, and then she can switch things around. I thought that's good too, because sometimes you want to have popcorn and apples and peanut butter. for
Yes.
dinner.
Exactly.
You know, so you can shift it around a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And the other things I do is when I have chicken or turkey, I always make stock out of it because it's nice to have good homemade stock in your freezer.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not opposed at all to buying good quality chicken stock and beef stock, but I love making it from scratch.
And how delicious does that make your soups?
Yeah.
I bet it really does set them over the top.
Yeah. I also have switched because we don't drink a lot of milk now that we don't have kids at home. So I just use coconut milk in almost everything, and it's lighter.
Mm-hmm.
And then people that are dairy sensitive, then I've solved that problem.
Exactly.
And gluten-free flour can be a great thickener because we have a son-in-law who's gluten-free, and it doesn't affect the taste. I haven't done a lot of baking with gluten-free flour, so you know.
But having it on hand for for when you need to thicken a soup or
Then
anything.
you can give the soup away, no matter who, you know.
Yeah, you're avoiding all allergies.
Let's see, what other things do I? Oh, another thing, if we're having a big crowd like at Thanksgiving, the girls, the granddaughters love to do name tags, and that's nice to do because then there's not confusion about where you're all sitting, and sometimes we'll put all the men at one end of the table, the women at the other end, because our table is so big, you can't carry on a conversation from end to end. So sometimes we'll do that. Sometimes we'll mix, put the couples together, especially when we don't know them very well, because we think, well, maybe this wife needs to be by her husband when she's in a new crowd or whatever, you know. So we play it by ear and try to be sensitive to what our unknown guests are like, you know, what makes them comfortable.
But yes, being able to walk in if you're a new family with, there's 30 chairs in front of you, being able to walk in and know by quickly glancing at the tags, or maybe somebody points you in the right direction, but know where your spot is and not just try to pick. And then if there's lots of different couples, are you picking a seat where that's one thing I've always wondered about or worried about is if it's not assigned, well, what if you pick a seat and then it means that somebody else can't sit next to each other because you've messed up the numbers, the ratios.
Yeah.
Maybe there's one lonely chair here and now there's only one lonely chair, way down at the other end. So
maybe everybody's sitting by their spouse except this spouse is split.
Right.
Up,
and you caused it because you sat in the wrong order.
It takes some juggling, and usually if I do name tags, I'll put them out, and then I'll have my daughter and daughters-in-law check it. Is there anything you would switch? And sometimes they do. Something I've had a ton of trouble with is counting. I'll think, oh, I have 14 adults and 20 kids, and then I realize at the last minute, oh, I counted wrong, or I have 15 adults or 16 adults or 12. That happens a lot.
Do you ever set extra plates just in case?
We have had extra by accident, which is nicer than the other way around.
Right, exactly.
But sometimes if I'm short, I'll go, oh, I didn't count myself because
you have to put yourself in the number
off of who I missed.
Right, that's true. That's true. That's always a good backup thing to say. Oh, there's one missing seat. It was me. I forgot to count.
Yeah.
Not you.
It's.
I remembered you.
Yeah, that's funny.
So what is your best prep tip for preparing for all these people walking in your house? It could be cooking, shopping, cleaning. What do you do? What are your hot tips to help prepare?
Well, for shopping, I think having a list, because I have always been a person that has a list in my head, and I can no longer do that because there's too many people. So I shop off a list and having a plan, of course. And then also, when I shop, other times when I'm not shopping for a big thing, when I see the thing that I use a lot on sale, I always get more. I have a storeroom in the basement that's my Christmas room, but it's also my extra food room, So I'll just get more of something if it's something I use a lot. I went through my pantry the other day and just took out all the things that have been in there for years. I don't know, a can of evaporated milk, or something that's been in there so long.
Right, where you're like,
I either
okay, it's expired a long
I'm
time ago.
sure
Not even
it's
just last
expired.
month, but
Yeah, right.
potentially years
It's like
ago.
very expired. I also, for cleaning tips, I was trying to think of, and I thought, vacuum when your husband's home so he can move all the furniture.
Oh, that's a great tip.
Because he's very thorough, and I'm more like, oh, let's get the big stuff. And so if I start vacuuming when he's home, he's up and he's moving stuff, and I'm like, great.
So he's helping you get all the dust bunnies.
Right. Shopping tip, that shop, chop, and drop. That was one of them. In town here, I think Winco's like the best value, probably.
They do
and I know a lot
prices.
of the young gals do the grocery pickup and stuff, but I like to grocery shop, and I have the time, so I do. I might have used it when my kids were little, which it wasn't available then.
I know. Remember back when my kids were little, no, it was not available. And
Neither
now
was the iPhone.
Yeah, that's true.
So,
yeah, there were lots of things. We sound so old. Some of the listeners were like, no iPhone, no grocery pickup.
you mean you can't make a note on your phone for your list?
Exactly.
No.
Yeah, you didn't look at, you had a paper list that you wrote out, and hopefully you'd remembered a pen. It was always the worst if you forgot your pen.
To knock it off.
Yes, because then if you have a list of 50 things, you were just racking your brain, rereading the list, trying to make sure you haven't missed an item.
Right.
Yeah, those were times. I remember, I think one time I actually bought a pen because it was just too much.
You just need to be able to take
needed
it
to be
off.
able to cross through it. Now I don't usually have a written list. I do have a phone list, and then you can also, from your phone, you can be deleting it as you buy it. And so then
that's
it
what I do
narrows your
now.
list. It's very nice.
Finding cooking inspiration is one of the things you have on here. So I use the internet a lot. I have a couple favorite sites. Like I go to Natasha's Kitchen.
Okay.
A young gal, Christian. I'm pretty sure she's a Christian, but she has a lot of very practical. I have things, and I haven't made anything from her website that I haven't liked.
I'll have to look her up.
Yeah. And then I use Bon Appetit and Smitten. I mean, I'll say best steak skewers, and then I look through. I mean, we have so much on the web that we can choose from.
That's true. We can really change things up so much. Like you're saying, if you just have an inspiration, like, I haven't made steak skewers for a while, then you can experiment.
Right. I like doing that.
So what is your best advice for showing warm hospitality to those coming into your home? You have mentioned some ways that you make them feel welcome when they walk in the door, and those have been really good tips. Do you have any other things you would recommend?
I talked about having simple things that women can be in the kitchen and help you with. I think that's a really big one, and it's not second nature to me. So my husband has helped me with that. When I go somewhere, I like to take a hostess gift, but I don't expect one at all. And if it's somewhere where I go often, then I don't do a hostess gift every time, but just something like a little tea towel or a candle or something. It's just a little thank you. I think that's a nice thing to do.
It's a really good thought. And sometimes I don't think about it ahead of time, so I have tried in the past to collect a few things and keep them, like a little jar of jam from a specialty store, or you mentioned a tea towel or candle, or just a good chocolate bar, something like that, where you can take a little something. And I have had that thought right before leaving, like, I don't have anything. And then I remember, oh yeah, I do have that jar of jam up in the pantry.
Yeah, I have a drawer down in my sewing room that I have things like that. And it doesn't always fit the occasion or the person, but a lot of times it does. And it takes running into Safeway out of your day. So, another thing is I do not mind using paper products. I don't mind using paper plates for things because, for one thing, our dishwasher won't hold 40 plates. We don't have 40 plates, but for the holidays, I like using real plates, so to speak, especially if it's a messy meal, because it, doesn't soak through the paper plate. But I use paper products a lot. But it's just a less stressor thing, Like we had our youngest son's wedding out at our property 3 years ago. And of course, we used disposable things for 350 guests,
Wow.
So if you can do it for a wedding,
you can do it for your weekly
Thanksgiving
dinner.
or for a weekly dinner, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
do you have any particular ones that you recommend, like what you buy,
Amazon,
where you buy it?
go to Amazon. I think for that wedding, we did kind of a disposable bamboo kind of plate, and they weren't that expensive. I've also started getting things in bulk from either Amazon or there's a website, I think it's called, it's not Restaurant Supply, but it's some sort of paper products.
Well, I've heard of that, like web restaurant
supply
or something like that.
Because I got really great disposable coffee cups that have a ridge to them, and you can get them in a tan color and a red color, like a dark red for Christmas. And it's so much better than popping into the grocery stores and trying to find a decent looking paper cup, because you want them to be something that looks nice too.
Here I am seeing one that says webrestaurantstore.com. Is that the one? And is that where you got the cups?
It might be, but I can find out. I got the name of it from Catherine Church years and years ago. Some sort of paper product store.
Yeah.
It might have been the restaurant store, but
well, if you're doing large events a lot, then having that in bulk is no big deal. You want something. It's okay. Right. You're not thinking, oh, well, I'm only going to use 20 of these coffee cups and then never again. Yeah, you're going to be using them weekly.
I think for Luke and Jasmine's wedding, I got like you could get 500, and went down in cost when you went from 100 to 200 to 500. And I thought, well, I'm going to get 500. And I ran out of them just a while ago because I used 300 or something for the wedding, and I had I had 200, and I'm like, oh, I'm bummed that I don't have those because they were a comfortable cup to hold, and they looked nice and they were sturdy. So I'm going to have to
purchase another 500.
Yeah, or the same with paper plates. You don't think about getting 500 of them. You think of going to Costco and getting 250. Well, you can get a much better deal, and they last longer, and you are going to use them. If you're being hospitable, you are going to use them,
Yeah, so if you have a place to store them, that's worth looking
key.
around.
That's key. Not everybody has the storage for them. So, but I like to say I'm the paper product queen.
Well, that makes cleanup pretty simple.
Yeah.
So you use lots of paper products. Tell me a little bit about how you set up when you have people coming in. Do you do a family style with so many people? Do you do a bar? Do you always have plenty of food?
We always want to do family style, but it just doesn't work. It's just too many little kids to pass things around. So, plus when you come in our front door, it's very congested. So we have to kind of move the crowd into the living room, and there's a little tiny den. But we do almost all the time buffet style because it just works. And we happen to have a very long counter in our kitchen that works well for it. And we've gone different ways. We usually have the moms of tiny little kids go through first and get those plates ready and set them on the table before we actually have everybody come and sit. And then that way, that whole crowd that's underfoot is taken care of. And then we have the moms and the older girls go through, and then we have the dads, and most of our boys that are 7 or older go through with the men. And then we keep our oldest boys, and I won't say their name on the air, they sit with the adults. They're not at the kid table anymore because it's good for them to hear those conversations and mix with the dads especially, So we do that.
About what age do you move them from the kid table to the adult table?
Well, it kind of depends on how many adults we have, because there's a point where
a certain number of seats.
Yeah. So a lot of times, depending on who we have over, we might say, okay, it's all the adults and the girls at the main table, or all the adults and the oldest boys. And the girls are always wanting to have like the crystal glasses or the china teacups. So sometimes, because we rarely have more than 6 or 7 girls, I'll make a table for them just themselves, and they get the teacups because I have a collection of teacups.
That's a fun idea.
They love doing that, So, and I work very hard at. Oh, that's great that you want me to get all the teacups down, because sometimes it's so chaotic. I'm like, no teacups in my mind.
Right, no,
but
we're having paper plates tonight.
I make myself do it because I think that's going to be a memory they have that will be a fun memory for them. So
Yes.
I tell myself, okay, they get to have the teacups.
Right. I'm going to say yes. They can have the teacups tonight.
Right.
Well, that's a fun idea to have that for the girls. I hadn't thought of that, where if you had a girls' table that you could make it a little bit fancier. And of course, they would love it. I mean, girls are the ones that are always throwing tea parties and all that kind of thing.
Right.
What is your must-have kitchen item?
Okay, so that's a fun question because I would say it used to be I had a Pampered Chef. I have it still, a Pampered Chef chopper where you chop onto the counter or a cutting board. But now I have one of those. What's it? It's like it can do more than the Pampered Chef. It's one of those ones that has the bin and then you chop down on
like
the
a
thing.
full star chopper where you put the different discs in there.
Right, like that kind of thing. I have one of those. Although I enjoy chopping all my stuff, but sometimes I make pico de gallo a lot, and this it makes it so fast. But over the last few years, I have at Christmas time gone online and say, what are the chef's favorite tools? Because they'll usually do that.
Make a list.
They'll say, I'm a restaurateur person and I can't live without this thing. So last year or 2 years ago, I got this for all the girls in their stocking. It's just called a meat chopper.
Okay.
And I don't like having extra things in my kitchen that I don't use. But this we use all the time. So when you have burger or sausage, you go like this and it chops it up so much faster than just a spoon. And I got it on Amazon.
And that's not expensive at all.
Not expensive, but my girls all use it. So it was a successful one. And one time it was like a rotary, like a pizza cut, a special pizza cutter, which wasn't as successful. But so I try to get something little that's just for fun.
Well, kitchen items in your stocking is a fabulous idea.
Yeah.
I never mind that.
Yeah, even though I'm not doing stockings for everybody anymore because it's too much.
The parents have taken over.
The parents do that, and they come over. Our kids in town come over on Christmas morning after they've done their presents and their stockings, and we do a Christmas brunch. I don't do a Christmas dinner. And part of that, I didn't grow up really with a big Christmas dinner. We had a Christmas brunch, and then like Paige's family does a Christmas dinner, so they have Christmas brunch with us, and then they go later in the afternoon to their family. But we love breakfast food, and we do Dutch babies, and it's a big to do. It's bacon and really sausage fun. and it's a huge thing. So they open their we do all the cousin and sibling exchange, and then do the brunch. So
a lot of times when I think of Christmas foods, there is the dinner menu, but there's always the breakfast menu too. It's hard to decide, are you going to make the cinnamon rolls? Or are you going to make, there's a friend that has chocolate rolls, or,
I know.
There's all these things that you think about that are special for the holiday. So having a brunch, you can pull out all the stops.
Yeah. You can do the eggs and everybody has something in that menu they like. So that usually ends up being on the table at about 11, So
perfect timing for the kid. The kids probably had a small little bit at home, but now they're starving again.
Right.
Doesn't take long.
And then if they're going to a Christmas dinner at 4 or 5, that's good timing,
You've separated it out enough. Well, I'll have to post a picture of this on my website. I'll put it under my shop page as well, a link to where you can buy it from Amazon.
I use it all the time,
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I need to get one. I have seen that, but I have never used one, and so I need to buy one. They're not expensive.
They're not. I can't remember. I'm sure it was under $15, if not under 10.
I agree. I think they are somewhere more around 10. So,
and I don't have an Instapot because I don't know. I use my crock pot, and I I don't need it in the same way, but I think it is a big time saver, apparently.
Mm-hmm.
We grill a lot. Even in the winter, we grill a lot.
That's fun.
Yeah.
Do you do it too, I guess? I mean, obviously
I
you
grill
like
more
to
than my husband. He doesn't really like to, so I out of necessity do. But Brian, my son, loves to grill. So when they're coming over and we're grilling, he does the grilling. So
What are your favorite things to grill, just as a side note?
chicken. I've been experimenting with steak skewers because we love the ones that tapped. So I'm trying to mimic that.
Mm-hmm.
I do pork roasts a lot on the grill.
That's really delicious. The shredded pork.
Last year I did a turkey on the grill for Thanksgiving, and Brian did one too. So we had 2 turkeys, and I think we had 3 turkeys last year. Because, that's another thing, when we have guests, especially for things like Thanksgiving and Easter, I buy extra foil pans so people can go home with leftovers, because everybody loves leftovers from Thanksgiving and Easter, and what a bummer
to have nothing.
To go home and have nothing. So we send a lot of food home. And we do on Sundays too with our kids. We send food home because we can't eat through all the food. And that's fun. And I just put them out there and I say, grab from here the things you like, you know.
And then a metal pan they don't have to return. It just can stay at their house, go in the trash when they're done. And you're right. Nobody really wants to cook the next day. They want a taste of all those favorites that they just had, because a lot of times Black Friday shopping is happening or some other activity. Some people do the day after Thanksgiving Christmas tree. You know, usually there's something where it's not.
You're busy. You're busy.
You want to be celebrating, not thinking through, what do I have to do to cook and clean up and all the things.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
From all of your years of hospitality, do you have a story you'd like to share?
Oh, I have a couple stories.
I'm sure
like
all probably lots.
All the mandarin oranges, right?
That one.
I was thinking this was just our family, but I was serving a rendition of Snow on the Mountain, and I had a pan with the chicken and sauce and salt, pepper, and the whole pepper container dumped into the sauce, which would have made it inedible for 3 and 4 year olds, right? So my father-in-law was standing right there, and he just makes this big growl, and he grabs a spoon and he starts just eating the pepper off of the top. And making the kids just laugh and laugh and laugh. I'm sure he was burning up, but we were able to eat the meal. You know?
He sacrificed for the cause.
And then one time we had a crowd down when we lived in Seattle, and the kids were playing games, and so I was serving dessert and decaf coffee. And somebody said, "This is decaf?" I said, "Yeah, it's decaf." And we sat up till like 1 a.m. The next morning at church, everybody's coming up and saying, "That's not decaf. I had mixed the containers."
Oh, no. And they were all up all night long.
You just go, "Oh, sorry."
Oops.
I'm sure there's tons of funny ones. I just can't think of all of them right now. But,
I know. After years and years of dinners and events, for sure, there's more.
Yeah. So
our memory lets them go.
Now I have a white container and a red container. Red is real. White is not wheel.
My father-in-law used to say leaded and unleaded.
Yeah.
I guess the unleaded was the not real.
Right.
That's pretty good.
Oh.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been great to hear all of your tips and stories. I have enjoyed it, and I cannot wait to make this recipe. I have obviously had chicken and rice, but I have not had Snow on the Mountain, where you get to top it with all kinds of fabulous toppings.
I can also send it to you.
Okay. Okay. Well, I bet I can easily type this up. Or scan. You can now on my phone, I can scan it, and it sends the text to me. So yes, I will post her recipe on the website, and it will be under her blog post under recipes on comeoverfordinner.com. So
that sounds great.
Thank you for joining me today.
Yes, it was fun.
Until next time, bye for now.